My name is Nathan Carter, and at 37 years old, I thought I had life figured out. My wife, Emily, was 35, a talented graphic designer with an eye for detail. We had been married for 13 years and had two children, our 10-year-old daughter, Sophie, and 7-year-old son, Ben. We lived in a cozy suburban home that felt like a haven from the world's chaos. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and for the most part, it was good. My job as an offshore engineer came with a rotating schedule, 1 month on, 1 month off. It wasn't ideal, but it provided well for our family. Emily's work allowed her to manage things at home during my absence, and while the distance strained us occasionally, we always found our way back to each other. At least, that's what I believed. Over the years, we had our share of disagreements. Life with two kids and demanding careers wasn't always smooth sailing. Emily would occasionally mention feeling overwhelmed or lonely during the months I was away, but I chalked it up to the normal challenges of marriage. I tried to make up for it when I was home, cooking dinner, helping with homework, and planning family outings. I never thought for a second that her words hinted at something deeper. The cracks in our foundation were subtle, hidden beneath years of routine. I trusted Emily implicitly. There was no reason not to. She was attentive, kind, and supportive, always making sure our kids were happy and our home was running smoothly. So, when I stumbled across something that shook that trust to its core, it felt like my entire world shifted under my feet. It started on a quiet evening during one of my months at home. I was searching for an old watch I hadn't worn in years, rummaging through the back of our shared closet when I noticed a small, unfamiliar box tucked away beneath some folded sweaters. Curious, I pulled it out, thinking it might be a gift she'd hidden for an upcoming occasion. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside was a collection of expensive jewelry, far beyond what we could typically afford, and several folded notes. My hands trembled as I unfolded the first one. The words on the page were a sucker punch to the chest. They were love notes, signed by someone named Michael. My chest tightened as I read the words, each line feeling like a dagger. The notes weren't ambiguous. They were intimate, filled with professions of love, admiration, and longing. Michael's handwriting was neat, deliberate, almost mocking in its perfection. I flipped through them, each one more damning than the last. The jewelry glittered in the box, silent witnesses to their betrayal. A gold bracelet, a delicate diamond necklace, and a pair of sapphire earrings. Each piece more extravagant than anything I had ever bought Emily. My mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was this some misunderstanding? A sick joke? But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen the way Emily's face would light up when she talked about her work, the time she'd casually mention late meetings or a demanding new client. It all started to click. I put the box back exactly as I found it and closed the closet door, my heart pounding in my ears. For a moment, I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Confronting her immediately felt reckless, like throwing a match into a pool of gasoline. I needed more. Evidence. Clarity. Something that would remove all doubt. Emily's laptop was on the kitchen counter. It had been her trusty companion for years, a tool she used for work and occasionally for managing family logistics. I hesitated, knowing I was crossing a line. But the image of those notes wouldn't leave my mind, and I couldn't rest until I knew the full truth. The password was easy. Our anniversary. My hands were steady as I navigated through her files, checking her emails first. At first, there was nothing. Work emails, family correspondence, random confirmations for online purchases. Just as I was about to close it, I noticed a folder buried deep in her cloud storage labeled Design Inspirations. The innocuous title belied the bombshell it held. Inside were photos and messages exchanged between Emily and Michael. Images of them together, laughing at some event, sitting too close on what looked like a private patio, and even one of him kissing her cheek. My heart twisted as I scrolled through the messages. They were affectionate, filled with plans for their next rendezvous, and jokes about our secret moments. Each word was a betrayal, a reminder of how far this had gone behind my back. One message hit me harder than the rest. It was from Michael, sent just a week ago. I can't wait to see you again. The month feels endless without you. He doesn't appreciate you the way I do. You deserve more, Emily. The fury boiled up inside me, threatening to explode. He didn't appreciate her? I had built my entire life around her, worked tirelessly to provide for our family, sacrificed my time and energy for this home, for her. And she had chosen this. Him. I closed the laptop and stepped away, needing air. My mind was a chaotic storm of anger, pain, and disbelief. I went to the back porch and stared into the dark, gripping the railing as I tried to steady myself. I needed a plan, not just to confront her, but to deal with this betrayal in a way that would leave no room for her to spin the narrative. I couldn't let her turn this around on me or brush it under the rug. This was war. By the time I came back inside, the house was eerily quiet. Sophie and Ben were already asleep, and Emily was in the living room, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine on the side table. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, that familiar warm expression that used to make me feel like the luckiest man in the world. Now it felt like a mask, one I couldn't unsee. "I didn't hear you come in," she said, her voice light and casual. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone even, my face blank. "Just needed some fresh air." She nodded and returned to her phone, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to throw the evidence in her face and demand answers. But I held back. This wasn't the moment. I needed to think clearly, to plan my next move with precision. If she was capable of betraying me like this, I couldn't afford to act impulsively. The next day, I spent hours digging deeper. While Emily was out running errands, I copied the contents of her laptop to a flash drive and uploaded everything to a secure folder on my own computer. I scoured her messages, her calendar, even her browser history, piecing together a timeline of her deception. It was worse than I had imagined. The affair had started nearly a year ago, during one of my months away. Michael wasn't some random man. He was one of her clients, someone she had worked with on a major design project. Their professional relationship had blurred into something personal, then intimate. There were messages hinting at romantic weekends while I was offshore, gifts exchanged, and even vague mentions of future plans that didn't seem to include me. But the most infuriating discovery came in a text exchange dated just last month. Michael had asked her, "Does he suspect anything?" Her reply was chilling. "Not a chance. He trusts me completely." Those words cemented my resolve. She thought she could keep me in the dark, string me along while she lived this double life. But she was wrong. If she wanted to destroy our marriage, then I was going to make sure she paid the price for it. That evening, as Emily sat at the dining table helping Sophie with homework, I watched her from the kitchen, my mind already formulating a plan. This wasn't just about exposing her betrayal. It was about reclaiming control, about making sure she understood the gravity of what she'd done. I wouldn't lash out in anger or stoop to petty revenge. No, my response would be calculated, deliberate, and devastating. Step one was securing my assets. The next morning, I met with our financial advisor under the guise of routine maintenance and quietly transferred half of our joint savings into a private account. I updated my will, changed passwords on all personal accounts, and started documenting everything I'd uncovered. Each piece of evidence was methodically organized, ready to be presented if and when the time came. Step two was enlisting help. I contacted a lawyer, explaining the situation in full. They assured me that with the proof I had, I'd be in a strong position for a divorce. But they also advised patience. Escalating too soon could backfire if I wasn't fully prepared. For now, I played the role of the unsuspecting husband. I smiled when she smiled, helped with the kids, and even pretended to plan a weekend trip together. But beneath the surface, I was laying the groundwork for the moment her world would come crashing down. Every interaction, every word, was a carefully crafted step toward exposing her for who she truly was. Emily had taken something sacred and turned it into a lie. Now it was my turn to rewrite the story. The next few days were a whirlwind of quiet planning. Every moment I spent around Emily felt surreal, like I was living with a stranger. She carried on with her routine, oblivious to my growing suspicions and the lengths I was going to uncover the full truth. I needed more than just the messages and photos I had already found. I needed something undeniable, something she couldn't explain away or twist to her advantage. One afternoon, while Emily was out picking up the kids from school, I installed a screen recording program on her laptop. It was subtle, running silently in the background, capturing every keystroke, email, and browser tab she opened. It wasn't enough to know she was betraying me. I needed to understand the extent of it. Who was Michael? How far had this gone? And most importantly, where was he getting the money to shower her with gifts we couldn't possibly afford? Later that night, I reviewed the first batch of recordings. I watched as Emily logged into her email, exchanging casual banter with Michael about their next getaway. She also accessed a shared calendar where they had blocked off time in the coming month, while I would be away for work, no less. It made my stomach churn to see how meticulously they planned around my absence, treating my life like an inconvenience to their affair. Then came the financial transactions. Emily opened a PayPal account linked to a credit card I didn't recognize, transferring funds back and forth with Michael. He was sending her thousands of dollars, often with cryptic notes like "for the bracelet" or "our little secret." This wasn't just a fling. There was something deeper, something financial, tying them together. I saved every recording, every screenshot, building an airtight case. Still, questions lingered. Who was Michael? Where's he getting this kind of money? I wasn't satisfied with just confronting Emily. I wanted to expose Michael too. He had wormed his way into my marriage and my life, and I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. I contacted a private investigator, a seasoned professional named Greg, whose reputation for discretion and thoroughness was unmatched. I provided him with everything I had gathered: the emails, the calendar entries, the transaction records, and even a few blurry photos of Michael that Emily had saved on her laptop. Greg assured me he would dig into Michael's background and uncover the truth. While Greg worked, I continued to monitor Emily's laptop. Over the next week, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Michael wasn't just a random fling. He was a wealthy entrepreneur, someone with connections and resources that far outstripped my own. Emily had mentioned him casually in one of their messages, calling him a self-made investor, but there was an undercurrent of secrecy to their exchanges, as though even she didn't fully understand where his wealth came from. Greg's report arrived 3 days later, and it was worse than I imagined. Michael was indeed an investor, but not a legitimate one. He was deeply entrenched in a network of shady businesses, including money laundering and questionable offshore accounts. His gifts to Emily were likely funded through illegal activities, and his name was already on the radar of several law enforcement agencies. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had Emily betrayed me, but she had entangled herself, and by extension, our family, in the web of a criminal. This wasn't just a matter of infidelity anymore. It was a matter of safety. What if Michael's enemies discovered her connection to him? What if his actions led to legal trouble for us? Armed with this new information, I knew it was time to take action. I couldn't let this continue, not for another day. My plan wasn't just about confronting Emily anymore. It was about protecting my kids, myself, and what little dignity I had left. Michael had made a mistake by involving himself in my life, and now it was time for him, and Emily, to face the consequences. Greg's office was quiet except for the hum of a small desk fan and the shuffle of papers as he spread out his findings. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on the room as he laid out the full extent of Michael's activities. Fraud, money laundering, and a long history of exploiting women for personal and financial gain. It was all there in stark detail. "This guy isn't just some smooth talker," Greg said, his voice even but sharp. "He's a professional manipulator, and his business dealings are a legal minefield. If the authorities catch wind of this, and they will, once we're done, he's going down hard." I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the desk. "So, how do we make sure it sticks? I want him exposed, ruined, and out of Emily's life permanently." Greg nodded, sliding a manila folder toward me. "Here's what we'll do. I've already compiled a report detailing his fraudulent activities and financial connections. We'll send this to the right people: law enforcement, regulatory agencies, even a few reporters who specialize in uncovering corporate crime. But we need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more time he has to cover his tracks." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Send everything." Greg held up a hand. "Not so fast. Once this hits, it could have ripple effects. Emily's name might get dragged into it. She's not directly involved in his crimes, but the financial ties could raise questions. You need to be prepared for collateral damage. I clenched my jaw, the thought of Emily's reckless choices putting our family at risk igniting a fresh wave of anger. I'll deal with Emily. She's already done enough damage. My priority is protecting my kids and making sure they don't get caught up in this mess. Greg leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Good. Let's talk about the divorce. How are you planning to divide the property and custody? I'm filing for full custody, I said firmly. Emily can have visitation rights, but I won't let her make decisions that affect Sophie and Ben's future. She's already shown she can't be trusted to prioritize their well-being. With the evidence you have, a judge will likely agree, Greg said. But be prepared for a fight. Custody battles can get ugly. I'm ready for it, I replied, my voice cold. As for the property, she can have the house. I don't want to stay in a place filled with memories of her betrayal. I'll find a new home for me and the kids. She can deal with the mortgage and all the responsibilities that come with it. Greg scribbled a few notes before looking up. And the finances? I've already moved half of our joint savings into a separate account, I said. It's enough to start fresh. She can keep the rest. I don't care about the money. I just want my kids and a clean slate. Greg nodded approvingly. That's smart. You're thinking ahead, which is good. But don't underestimate Emily's reaction when she realizes what's happening. She might not go down without a fight. She can try, I said grimly. But I've got everything I need to protect myself and the kids. Let her come at me. I'm ready. Greg smiled faintly, tapping the folder. You're in a strong position, Nathan. We'll send out the first round of reports on Michael tomorrow. Once the authorities and the media are involved, it's only a matter of time before he's exposed. In the meantime, focus on finalizing your divorce plan. The sooner you file, the better. I left Greg's office with a renewed sense of purpose. The clock was ticking, and every second brought me closer to the moment everything would unravel. For Michael, for Emily, and for the life I thought I knew. There was no turning back now. That evening, I sat down at my computer and began preparing my case. I reviewed every piece of evidence Greg had gathered, organizing it into a meticulous timeline of betrayal and deceit. Emily's emails, the financial transactions with Michael, the gifts, the trips, it was all there, a damning portrait of the choices she had made. But as I worked, I couldn't help but think about Sophie and Ben. They didn't deserve any of this. They were innocent, caught in the crossfire of their mother's selfishness. I vowed to shield them from as much of the fallout as possible. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my family and rebuilding a life they could be proud of. By the time I went to bed, the plan was clear. Greg would take care of Michael, ensuring his empire crumbled under the weight of his crimes. I would focus on dismantling what was left of my marriage, ensuring that Emily's betrayal didn't leave lasting scars on the people I loved most. Justice was coming, swift, calculated, and relentless. The next morning began like any other. Emily preparing breakfast, the kids chattering about school projects. But for me, everything had shifted. I was no longer Nathan, the dutiful husband and father holding it all together. I was a man on a mission to reclaim my life and exact justice on those who had betrayed me. Today was the day I started tearing down the carefully constructed facade Emily and Michael had built. The first strike, Michael. Greg moved swiftly. By noon, the first batch of evidence was sent to the FBI and several financial regulators. Emails, transaction records, and details of Michael's offshore accounts were laid bare, painting a damning picture of his fraudulent activities. Greg had also tipped off 2 journalists known for uncovering corporate corruption, ensuring the story would gain traction. Within 48 hours, the fallout began. News outlets picked up the story, exposing Michael's shady dealings to the public. His business associates scrambled to distance themselves, while clients began pulling out of deals. His name was plastered across headlines. Investor exposed in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Behind the scenes, law enforcement was closing in. A subpoena was issued for his financial records, and his accounts were frozen pending investigation. Michael's empire, built on lies and exploitation, was crumbling. He was facing not just public humiliation, but the very real threat of prison time. The divorce papers. While Michael's world fell apart, I turned my attention to Emily. The night before, after the kids went to bed, I had quietly packed a suitcase for her and set it by the door. The next morning, as she sipped her coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing around her, I placed the divorce papers on the table in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she set down her mug. "It's over, Emily," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I'm filing for divorce. Full custody of the kids, you get the house, and I want you out by the end of the week." Her face paled as she flipped through the papers. "Nathan, wait. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I interrupted, my tone sharp. "I know about Michael. I know about the money, the trips, the lies. You've been cheating on me for over a year, and I have the evidence to prove it. Don't bother denying it." Tears filled her eyes as she stammered. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I was lonely. Don't you dare blame this on me," I snapped, leaning forward. "You destroyed this family. You put our kids' future at risk for what? Some fleeting affair with a criminal? You made your choices, Emily. Now you'll face the consequences." She broke down, sobbing, but I felt nothing. The betrayal had numbed me to her tears, her pleas. "You'll have visitation rights," I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. "But I'm taking full custody. Sophie and Ben deserve better than this." Emily's sobs turned to anger. "You can't just take my children from me." I slammed a folder onto the table. "This is everything," I said. "Emails, financial records, messages with Michael. A judge will see what you've done and rule in my favor. Try to fight me, and I'll make sure this goes public." Her defiance crumbled, and she slumped in her chair, defeated. "What do you want from me, Nathan?" she whispered. "I want you gone," I said. "Out of the house by Friday. You can keep the house, but you'll deal with the mortgage. I don't want a cent from you. I just want you out of my life." The fallout. By the end of the week, Emily moved out, leaving behind a quiet, somber home. Sophie and Ben were confused, their questions piercing but gentle. I explained that their mother had made some mistakes and needed time to figure things out. It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough to shield them from the worst of it. Meanwhile, the news about Michael continued to escalate. His arrest was imminent, his face plastered on every screen as a symbol of greed and corruption. Emily's involvement with him became public knowledge, and whispers of her connection to his scandal spread through our social circle like wildfire. Friends and acquaintances who once admired her now avoided her entirely. As for me, I filed for an expedited divorce. With the mountain of evidence I had, the process was swift and decisive. The judge granted me full custody of Sophie and Ben, citing Emily's reckless behavior and the potential danger her association with Michael posed to the children. Emily's visitation rights were limited to supervised visits until she could prove she had cut all ties with Michael. The aftermath. Michael's arrest came a week later. Handcuffed and surrounded by agents, he was paraded before the cameras, his confident smirk replaced with a look of utter defeat. His empire was gone, his accounts seized, and his reputation irreparably damaged. I couldn't have scripted it better. Emily's life was in shambles. She was forced to move into a small apartment, her once comfortable life reduced to a shadow of what it had been. As for me, I sold the family house and moved into a smaller, more peaceful home with the kids. We began to rebuild, slowly but surely. The weight of betrayal lingered, but so did a sense of liberation. I had faced the worst, and I had come out stronger. My focus was on Sophie and Ben, ensuring they had a stable, loving environment to heal and grow. Justice had been served. Michael was ruined, Emily had lost everything, and I had reclaimed my life. The scars of betrayal would always be there, but they were a reminder of how far I'd come, and how far I'd go to protect what truly mattered. The months after the divorce were a whirlwind of adjustment, healing, and rediscovery. For Sophie, Ben, and me, life gradually began to regain its balance. We fell into a new rhythm, one that wasn't defined by Emily's absence, but by our collective resilience. I made sure the kids felt loved and supported, throwing myself into parenting like never before. Every school project, every soccer game, Every bedtime story became an opportunity to rebuild trust and stability in their lives. But as time went on, I realized that while I had found peace in my role as their father, there was still a part of me that felt empty. The scars of betrayal had made me wary of relationships, yet I couldn't shake the hope that one day I might find someone who could understand and share my journey. It was at a local community event, a summer fair organized for single parents and their kids, that my path crossed with hers. Her name was Claire. She had an easy smile and a warmth that seemed to radiate in the way she spoke to everyone around her. She was helping her two children, a 10-year-old daughter, Lily, and an 8-year-old son, Max, navigate a face-painting booth when we first exchanged a polite greeting. Our initial conversation was casual, sparked by the kids' shared enthusiasm for the event. But as we talked, a deeper connection emerged. Claire had been through her own ordeal, her ex-husband's betrayal a wound that had shaped her life in ways I understood all too well. Yet there was no bitterness in her demeanor, only strength, resilience, and a quiet determination to move forward. Over the next few months, Claire and I grew closer. We bonded over shared experiences, exchanging stories of heartbreak and healing. Our children, too, seemed to form an instant connection. Sophie and Lily became inseparable, their shared age and interests making them fast friends. Ben and Max, despite the occasional squabble, quickly formed a brotherly bond, their laughter echoing through the house whenever they were together. Our relationship blossomed naturally, without pretense or pressure. Claire and I were careful, taking things slow to ensure that our children felt comfortable with every step. But as time passed, it became clear that we weren't just two single parents trying to make sense of our lives. We were a family in the making. A year after we first met, Claire and I decided to blend our lives fully. We moved into a home that was large enough for all 6 of us, a place filled with light and possibility. Decorating it became a family affair, with each child choosing their own room's theme and everyone pitching in to make the house feel like home. The days that followed were full of joy and discovery. Movie nights turned into rowdy family debates over the best superheroes. Game nights became a competition of wits and strategy. Every holiday was an adventure, filled with new traditions that celebrated our new beginning. For Sophie and Ben, Lily and Max became more than just friends. They became siblings. They shared secrets, inside jokes, and a fierce loyalty to one another that melted my heart. Watching them thrive together, I felt a sense of pride and gratitude that I couldn't put into words. As for Claire and me, we found a love rooted in understanding and mutual respect. There were no illusions, no hidden agendas, just two people who had faced the worst and come out stronger, ready to build something beautiful together. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the kids chase fireflies in the yard, Claire turned to me with a soft smile. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said. I nodded, taking her hand in mine, farther than I ever thought possible. She rested her head on my shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad we found each other." "So am I," I said, watching the kids laugh and shout under the fading light. This is everything I didn't know I needed. In the years that followed, our family only grew stronger. The scars of the past faded, replaced by the bonds we had forged together. Claire and I weren't just survivors of betrayal. We were partners in building a life filled with love, laughter, and hope. And as I watched our children grow, united as siblings in every way that mattered, I knew that we had created something truly extraordinary, a family reborn from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful than ever.